The Buckeyes steamroll through UCLA. What could possibly derail the championship run? I've got one possibility, and we saw a few examples limping around Ohio Stadium. We will delve into that. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Buckeyes live on a Wednesday, of course, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Steve Hellwagon right next to me, 247 Sports, Bucknuts, and of course, Tony Gerdeman. You can catch his work. The Buckeye Weekly podcast should be a destination for you Buckeye fans. And of course, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing well. Good. Well,
doing great.
Right. I think it's light in here. Yes. Good. And we want to let everyone know that this edition of Buckeyes Live is being brought to you by Brass Lantern Inn, and we will tell you a little bit more about their services and maybe your next getaway here in the next few minutes. All right. Not much to deal with this UCLA game necessarily in terms of trying to break down X's and O's. But when it comes to, of course, holding out Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith playing just for a short time and limping around, and all the speculation about what this looks like for them. Steve, I guess we'll start with you in regards to your thoughts about their health and what we know.
Well, yeah, if you want to delve into the Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate thing, basically Carnell Tate was in uniform last week for the game against Purdue and didn't play. They said, it came back that maybe he had gotten tightness, I presume, in a hamstring during warm-ups and didn't play, then wasn't even in uniform and was listed as out in the injury report this past week for UCLA. He wasn't listed in the injury report at all for Purdue, which makes me think this is something that cropped up on Friday or Saturday of that game week. And Coach Day yesterday said that both guys are working hard to get back. Jeremiah Smith, his name was listed in the injury report last week as questionable. He went through warm-ups and then went out and played for about a quarter and a half. Had 4 catches, 40 yards, I think, and they shut him down after the game. Coach Day said he was on a pitch count. When they shut him down in the middle of the second quarter against UCLA, it was probably a 17-0 game, and then they led 27-0 at halftime. So they obviously did not need Jeremiah Smith to continue playing to win that game. And now we're to this point this week. Yesterday, Coach Day said that both guys are working really hard. They've maintained good spirits, and they're trying to get back onto the field. He did not believe that Jeremiah Smith did anything to aggravate his injury. He said, "Not that I know of," I think, or something like that, when asked if he aggravated the injury. But Smith did seem to have somewhat of a noticeable limp, and just kind of guessing, I'm thinking it's a right foot or ankle injury. I don't know, but at any rate, that's kind of where we're at right now. In a perfect world, both those guys would play 2 series against Rutgers. It would be 14-0, and they could go grab a ball cap and clown around on the sideline the rest of the day. You want them, if they're healthy, to be able to maintain some type of rhythm going into the Michigan game the following week. If they're not healthy, then obviously the best thing to do is to rest them, come back a week from now, and see if they can get ready to play against Michigan. But that's everything I seem to know about it and everything that I kind of glean from it. I don't sense that this is necessarily the end of the world, what Coach Day put out there yesterday, but until you see number 4 and number 17 out there making miraculous catches again, and I'm in the back of the press box screaming, "He's got him!" Then when one of them gets 5 yards behind the nearest defensive back, then we know we're not quite out of the woods just yet.
Nothing I've heard to this point leads me to think that they won't be playing both against Michigan. Will they play this week? I don't know that anybody knows that just yet. And so the focus should obviously be Michigan. They can beat Rutgers without those two. It won't be as easy, certainly, and it may look a little clunky like the second half did. But I think they'll both be good to go. in terms of Jeremiah, and like I think everybody that has seen him has speculated on what the issue is, and we're all like, well, like Steve said, foot or ankle. I've seen back, I've seen hamstring, I've seen calf. Like, is it this? Is it that? And I don't think anything has been wrapped. So, yeah, that one doesn't even concern me, much at all, because that looks like something that gets stiff over time, but it's fine to play with. I mean, we saw him make a one-handed catch, and he looked just fine doing that. Being a questionable receiver, we should all be so questionable. And so, like, overall, I think they're going to be just fine. I think the lesson here is that things are going too smoothly, and there had to be something that popped up to create some havoc and some concern and consternation amongst Buckeye fans, which kind of leads to Big John's question about, do you guys feel that because of NIL and legalized sports gambling, Ohio State should be made to be more transparent when it comes to injuries? This is an issue that Ohio State fans have with Ryan Day. And I don't know, this shouldn't just be an Ohio State issue if it comes down to it. I would assume at some point they're going to want to do something like this to be more transparent on what actually is the issue. But then it also gets into protection of people's rights in terms of, well, why do I need to tell you what's wrong with me physically? Like, you have no right to know that information. It's like, well, but I'm gambling on you. I have all of the right. If I'm gambling on you, I should get to know whether it's a knee or a hip. Don't you think? So I get kind of roll my eyes at the idea that you have to do this for gamblers. We don't need to do anything for gamblers. No offense, Mark and Steve. And me, I'm terrible at it. So it's like, I'm the only offender here. But to help out the gamblers and to like make that a situation where, as long as everybody knows and there's no like secret information that could hinder a player or trap a player, like, I don't know that needs to be much of a thought, really, because I don't know what what's the argument for making all of this transparent.
Well, the NFL, with what they do, I think early in the week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, they put out an injury report, and lists everybody probable, questionable, out, whatever. And, things change throughout the week and they may amend it, but, colleges wait till 2 hours before the game. And, I guess there should be a happy medium in here somewhere. Again, Carnell Tate came up lame, it looks like, in pregame warmups at Purdue. I mean, unless we think maybe this happened on Friday in the quote best Fridays in football gag that they do. But I don't know. I mean, luckily this team hasn't had to deal with a ton of injuries this year. There have been years where, there's been guys in and out of the lineup all season. It's been a pretty steady and consistent lineup for Ohio State up until this point. A couple things on the offensive line have cropped up, but by and large, it's been a pretty good year. So I'm going to operate under the assumption that they're going to try and play at least some against Rutgers, but they don't need to play any more or any longer than when the game is decided, in my opinion. And certainly not even that much if it risks injury for the following week. So that's kind of my feeling on it. I don't again, I don't gamble enough on these games. The few games that I do gamble on, that it really impacts my life one way or the other. So I'm not a professional at this, so I don't worry about it too much. But I can understand, for fans, they'd like to know what the real story is. And it seems to me the NFL and the contracts probably puts it in the contract that, hey, we're going to have to disclose whatever health and injury issues you have publicly because it's an industry-wide policy. And perhaps that's what college has to adopt now that these guys are professionals at the college level, that you need to adopt something similar to whatever that clause is that the NFL has in their contracts.
Ryan Dawes checking in on this one. We appreciate you being here, Ryan. Thank you so much for the contribution, as always. In brackets for the RUTGERS segment, which this week, Ryan, will be the entire show, or will possibly be none of the show except for your question. The Rutgers segment is so important here. So we reached out to 4 different guests, potential guests, Ryan, but no dice this week on a Rutgers media person. Is there anything that Rutgers does well that will provide as the final quiz for the Buckeyes before the game? I will simply say that I've seen Rutgers play one complete football game. That was against Iowa. They led 14-0. They threw it around. Ethan Kalkimanis is the best Rutgers quarterback I've ever seen by far. Apologies to Gary Nova.
Okay.
But yeah, he's better than Gary Nova.
Don't take any Gary Nova slander on this channel.
I know. I'm taking privileges as the owner, but KJ Duff, Ian Strong, 2 really good receivers. You'll find them near the top of Big Ten receiving ranks, yardage, yards per catch, etc. So they can throw it around. Lost late to Minnesota, won late against Purdue. I think it's pretty much a typical Rutgers outfit. They played nobody in the non-conference schedule.
And Antoine Raymond, the running back last week, 41 carries, 240 yards in the win over Maryland. So they'll throw it around, but he's also had some good games. He ran at 161 yards against Minnesota. So we've seen him have some tough yards and 5 yards a carry this year, scored 11 touchdowns. What is not much of a test is in Big Ten play, Rutgers is giving up like 37 points a game. So none of those teams that Rutgers has played to this point had Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith. So you would think that Ohio State wouldn't need those 2 to score in the 30s. And you would also think that Rutgers certainly isn't going to score in the 30s. They give up a lot of big plays. I'd say it's strange for a Greg Schiano defense, but I remember a lot of big plays and, in a little bit of his time at Ohio State as well. But they get into shootouts that they can't necessarily handle at times, or, if they give up a lot of points and then they're forced to throw the ball, and they do it pretty well. As you mentioned, they've got 2 good receivers, and Nathan Kalkimanis, yes, better than Gary Nova. Gary Nova, the one player who I've slandered so much on Twitter, I felt bad for it and had to go delete all of my Gary Nova tweets over the years. I matured as I got older and thought, you know what? I don't need to be like tweeting like this about Gary Nova, and I can be the bigger person and delete these tweets.
To me, it doesn't make any sense that Greg Schiano, who's this, as our friend, guys, I love to use this word, our friend Tim May, who's a defensive guru. It makes no sense why they are so pathetically poor on defense. They are 120th in yards allowed, 425.5. They are scoring defense 106. They are giving up 30 points per game on the season. As you mentioned, 37, a robust 37 in Big Ten play. Rushing defense, they are 123rd, which puts them right around what UCLA was. And obviously, Ohio State went for 220 yards rushing last week, the first 200-yard rushing game against a Power 5 or Power 4 conference opponent. And they're giving up 196.5 yards per game. It was interesting. Our friend Stephen Means, I think, from Cleveland.com was sitting there. You know how the guys like to crack each other up, before the Ryan Day press conference, and said, they're going to run for 1 million yards against UCLA and Rutgers, who are terrible. And they're going to think they can run it and go up to Michigan and try and run it, and it's not going to work. Just kind of oversimplification of the whole thing. But yeah, don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe, which I've got a banana right here. Don't take any wooden nickels and believe that this is suddenly, an Eddie George rushing attack for Ohio State, because I think that when you get to Michigan next week, if they can get 125 yards rushing and not worry about trying to outrush Michigan, I think they'll win the game. So to me, that's kind of where that whole discussion stands in. But Raymond has been a godsend for them at running back. Ethan Kalkimanis has played a ton of football. He started 1 year at Minnesota, and now in the second year is the starter at Rutgers. And he's been to Ohio Stadium before. In 2023, he was the starting quarterback for Minnesota. He did not throw for 100 yards in that game. He was like around 85 yards or something, was sacked twice. I think he may have thrown one pick, and they lost the game 37-3. So he knows what it's like to go into Ohio Stadium and not perform very well. And I'm sure that he's telling everybody who will listen to him how great the Ohio State defense is. So that'll be a good matchup. Rutgers, good offense against Ohio State's great defense. But I think Ohio State, as Tony said, even without Tate and Smith, should be able to move the ball up and down the field against this god-awful Rutgers defense. And I just assume that Greg Schiano had X number of chips to spend on personnel and push them all to the center of the table on offense and had nothing left to buy any good defensive players.
Well, in terms of the rush defense, they've given up 26 rushes of 20 or more yards this season, which is worst in the Big Ten. The next worst team has 17, which is UCLA, which we saw last week. They've given up 14 30-yard rushes, which is much more than those second worst, which is Maryland at 8. They've given up 7 of 40 and 6 of 50. So Ohio State, this is probably a game where Ohio State doesn't necessarily need to pass, which would help the play action for some of the younger guys get open perhaps. But yeah, this is a really, really bad rush defense. And they also give up some big plays in the passing game. They give up more big plays than anybody else in the Big Ten, and it's only gotten worse since Big Ten plays gotten started and continued on. So this is probably the worst defense, the worst conference defense that Ohio State will play this year in terms of big plays and points, because even Wisconsin is tough. Penn State, of course, Purdue fights hard. UCLA is what they are, but the thing with Rutgers is. The thing that Ryan Day always talks about is they're just going to throw everything at you. And sometimes when they throw a bunch at you, that's why they give up big plays. They're going to come up with trick plays on offense and on special teams. They're going to do whatever they can on defense and just make this a game that you just have to pay attention to as a coach and as a player. You're always going to be looking out for something sneaky. I'm not saying it's going to be as sneaky as last week when one of the UCLA players went in motion and it just kept going to the sideline. But you'll see some sneaky stuff in this one from the Rutgers offense and special teams. I don't know how sneaky you can get on defense with these guys.
These numbers will probably get dinged, but yes, Kalkamanis and the receivers are 22nd in the nation in pass yards per game, 44th in pass efficiency. So it's not that they're just throwing it aimlessly. So they've been efficient as well. But yes, running the football before the effort by Raymond last week, number 111 in yards per carry. And they did have the pad of 3 non-conference games outside the power conference play, although Ohio pushed them to the limit 34-31. So
and Ohio State beat Ohio 37-9. So
and in Big Ten play, Rutgers is just behind Ohio State in terms of passing yards per game to give you an idea of how much they're throwing the ball, because the running game isn't always there.
Yeah, they lost to Minnesota 31-28. Ohio State beat Minnesota 42-3. Washington, they lost at Washington 38-19. Ohio State won there 24-6. Purdue, they beat Purdue on a last-second field goal, and Schiano celebrated like it was the Super Bowl. 20, of course, it snapped a 4-game losing streak, so you can understand. 27-24, they won that game. Ohio State beat Purdue 34-10. Illinois, they lost 35-13 on the road. Ohio State went there and won 34-16. So it's like a 20 to 30 point difference in every game across the board of the, what would it be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 common opponents, like a 30-point spread, what Ohio State did against each of those teams as to what a 20 to 30 point spread on what Ohio State did to what Maryland did. So, or rather Rutgers, sorry. It's easy to confuse the two. If they put them together as an all-star team, they might go 6-6, 7-5.
Mark, can you rewind to the breakfast? I was looking at that.
I would love to.
There you go.
So people are probably wondering, what am I looking at? We had like a 3-second gap, and I was just about to And then Steve stepped in with more RUTGERS
Sorry.
statistics there. No problem.
Where is this located? Vermont?
This is in Vermont, and this again
Okay.
is Brass Lantern Inn. And they're wondering who is looking to ski possibly in the East coming up this winter, because there's no better place to enjoy personal hospitality. You got great food. The Tony recognized right there. Best views in Stowe, Vermont at the Brass Lantern Inn.
Well,
and this is owned, you should both know, by a line of Buckeyes fans for the last 15 years.
Awesome. That's great. My wife wants to go to New England in the fall to see the leaves. And we did some research, and it says it's probably, do you go late September? Do you go October? They said mid-October, probably like the 10th to the 25th, in that range is probably. Mark, you lived up there, so probably better than I do. But does that sound like the better time to go to New England to see the leaves, like mid-October?
Yes. I have friends who are about 10 or 15 minutes away down here in Florida, and they have made 2 consecutive trips to Connecticut since they came up, and we hung out in October of last year. So they made another trip to Connecticut because they loved, well, my best buddy, the husband, kind of gets dragged along. His wife makes the decision. I love the fall leaves. I want to get to Connecticut in October. They go up there and they do a little gambling there as well.
Awesome.
And hit the casinos. And so we had a good time with them last year, but they made it on back as well. Yes, it's a beautiful time of year.
I've been to Boston twice now and was at ESPN headquarters one time. And that is the extent of my forays into New England. So I really haven't seen Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, at all. And just briefly set foot in Connecticut for about 4 hours and came home. So yeah, I'd like to get up there sometime and check all of it out.
I grew up in a Vermont bed and breakfast by watching the Bob Newhart show.
Larry and your other brother Larry.
That's right.
My brother Larry and my other brother Larry.
I hesitated for about a half second because that's not the Bob Newhart show I think of when I think first Bob Newhart show. But
the other one was in Chicago, wasn't it?
Yes,
wasn't he a psychologist or psychiatrist in Chicago?
Yes.
Wings, was it based in New England as well?
Rhode Island.
Let me tell you something, Lowell. I remember that. So,
all right. Well, I should also let everyone know that the pictures that you're seeing here are located in the Intimate Historic Select Registry. Recognized Vermont Inn offers a blend of modern conveniences, eclectic decor, thoughtful touches that will make your stay special. Minutes from the historic village with easy access to the Stowe Mountain Resort. Make the Brass Lantern your home base on your next Vermont adventure. You can go to www.brasslantern.in.com. We have posted the link both in the description section of this show and then also in the chat as well. So check it out, everyone. I don't know if getaways to New England are a good segue to run game breakdown. I don't know how to make that segue, so I didn't even attempt to. But you guys laid out the numbers against a porous UCLA rush defense and another one upcoming this Saturday. Is there any hope beyond hope itself that things are getting fixed? I see that Isaiah West, of course, is getting a little bit more run in recent weeks.
I think it's looking better because you're seeing things from guys that you didn't see before. Like Bo Jackson is seeing the field better. He had a cutback last week that we haven't seen before. Generally, his success just comes from going where the play is supposed to go. We saw this past week, cut back down to the 1. You're seeing him, as Ryan Day says, be his own blocker by running over people. Isaiah West, you're seeing him become more comfortable with he's always been good with his vision, but he's a patient runner. And then James Peoples was his best week last week. And you've seen this kind of building for him the last month or so. When he gets an opportunity, he only gets a couple of opportunities a game. you see him like rip off a 9-yarder and just come out of the tackle, just like pumped up and excited. And you saw that like he's hungry. They're all hungry, but as Ryan Day said, they're all going through this for the first time, but now they're more experienced than they were in September and October. So they're going to be looking better than they were back then. So yeah, there may be some fool's gold, but I also think there's some legitimacy to the fact that each of these guys is better than they were. And right now they're at the best because they're more experienced and they're having success and they're having confidence and they're keeping their eyes up, which I think is the biggest thing.
I want to say that this past week they inserted Gabe Van Sickle at right guard. He actually played more plays than Tegra Shabola. And I know Tegra, there was talk he may have had a nagging injury himself going on. And so it made sense to put Gabe in there. But Gabe played very well. Excuse me. Coach Day talked about how Carson Hinsman had 9 knockdowns. And I think most of those are going to occur in the run blocking scheme. And he said it's hard to knock over the trash cans, 9 times. So that was interesting. I think Luke Montgomery was the offensive player of the game for the Buckeyes. So he graded out really well. And as my recollection, he was just burying people there at left guard. That touchdown where I think West ran it in behind like Roberts, like sealed Roberts and Thurman, like sealed the end, and Sierraveld and Montgomery just crushed their guys, and there was nobody out there, and it basically walked into the end zone. That was pretty cool. So, if they can play like that against Michigan, and again, it's not necessarily, rushing for 150 or 200 yards against Michigan. It's okay. It's 3rd and 2. We need to go get 4 yards here. We need to go get 3 yards here and hand the ball to the official and make sure it's a first down. That's where it comes up. So when that moment comes and it's the moment of truth and there's 5 minutes to go in the game, and you're only up 6, you got to get that first down and keep the ball away from Michigan and not let them have the opportunity to go down and win the game. So that to me is what we're looking for. And as you two once famously said, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So, and I think some of it is the paucity, there's another word, or the lack of quality opponents that this Ohio State team has faced. And no one's really holding it against Ohio State. Number 1 again in the college football playoff rankings last night. The chairman spoke for probably 40 minutes afterward on a teleconference call, and I read the transcript today, and the words Ohio and State are nowhere in, or at least in combination with one another, are never mentioned in the entire transcript because Ohio State is so far out there at number 1 than anybody else. They don't have any tight squeezes like Indiana did against Iowa and Indiana did against Penn State, and then whatever that abomination was that Texas A&M had that completely, showed them to be completely fraudulent. They played the worst half of football, in the first half, down 30-3, and probably played the best half of football of anybody in the country in the second half. But, we can't give them credit for a whole lot there. That was a 3-6 team in South Carolina at Kyle Field. It's like that can't happen. But long way around the bend is Ohio State hasn't dealt with any of that. Texas was 14-7, but Ohio State did lead 14-0. So, they haven't been in that spot a whole lot, and they're going to have to prove that they can handle it when they do. It's kind of my feeling.
Yeah, I haven't even jumped on that teleconference the last 2 weeks because there's nothing
Ohio State related to discuss. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ohio State keeps pummeling people, and that committee just refuses to move them up the rankings, I guess. So anyway, number 1 and clear number 1, I would think at this point, although I still get viewers who argue the Indiana case, but regardless, and yes, Texas A&M is a decent football team, but they are not. Listen to these statistics that somebody pointed out to me last night, and I verified. If you lined up all the teams in the SEC in the standings, which they do, I believe, start to finish, depending on what you think of Tennessee and Missouri, basically is the only thing to be decided. Texas A&M's schedule up until this Texas game in 2 weeks lines up as them having played exactly the 8 worst teams or the 7 worst teams in the conference. Their conference composite opponent's record is 13-42 in the SEC. They could not have been given a better schedule.
Yeah, you see these teams play each other every week, like Georgia, Texas, and Alabama, Oklahoma, and Alabama, Tennessee, and all these teams hook up with one another week after week after week, and you're like, what week does Texas A&M play any of these teams? I guess they do play Texas next week.
That's it.
Obviously, is that the Black Friday night game? I think is that what that is. But I think that'll draw a pretty good audience. Although Texas down to 3 losses now is completely out of the focus, I think, for the playoff. So maybe they can be the spoiler. They would love nothing better than to spoil Texas A&M's party. But they have definitely had a charmed existence this year. And I think it was on my earlier show with Dave Biddle on Bucknuts Radio. We were kind of talking about the TV deals and the grant of rights and the private equity and all that. And, every week the SEC has just, and ABC and ESPN have just kicked the Big Ten's ass in the ratings. And a lot of that's had to do with the AP poll and there's always 6 or 7 SEC teams in the poll. And it feels like always 2 matchups of ranked teams and then a top 10 team playing another team. They have a great triple header every week. In the Big Ten, one of its triple header games this past week was Penn State and Michigan State, 2 teams coming off a 6-game losing streak. So I don't know if NBC and CBS are going to be up for paying through the nose for these terrible games going forward, if that's what it comes down to. But I don't know. It feels like the Big Ten needs to do a better job of matching up the haves with the haves and the have-nots with the have-nots, and let the have-nots die over on Peacock and BTN, and let the haves, play their games on network television.
And then last week it was USC and Iowa on BTN because of contractual obligations. And that was
they backed themselves into a corner on that. BTN hadn't had either team yet. So, yeah.
And because of
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and because of that, usually there is nothing that happens near the football field on a broadcast, on a network broadcast, that you miss. So if there's any kind of issue on the sideline, boom, somebody caught it somewhere, even if it's in the corner of the shot. But they had a situation where after the big replay at the end of the Iowa drive, where Caden Weegan was out of bounds by
a millimeter.
A
blade of grass.
That's tough to take. And actually, we went to the rule book on our Iowa show yesterday, and it's basically that he got the toe down, but you have to complete it, and you cannot, on the rest of your step, cannot step down out of bounds. While if you toe touch it and then lift the toe, then you're in bounds. Or even if you drag it, you're inbounds. And if you continue to drag your toe, because we went to a bunch of different examples of that, then that's inbounds. But you cannot toe tap it and then drop the rest of your foot in any way out of bounds.
That's what happened. That's what appeared to happen.
Yes.
But boy, oh boy.
What happened right after that was there was still 1:45 left in that game, and USC had a 3rd down, and all of a sudden, boom, unsportsmanlike, foul on Iowa, automatic 1st down, game's over. And I'm like, what happened here? And the announcer said nothing about it except, there was an unsportsmanlike, and went to the officials. And I'm like, we have no idea. There was a penalty against the Iowa sideline that we have no idea what happened.
God bless the Big Ten Network, but all these games being on television, there are only so many number of people who are skilled enough to give you a quality broadcast. And that, you think I sat in the production meeting that Todd Blackledge had before maybe the Minnesota game, I believe. I was there so early, and they have it in the cafeteria area in the press box. And it was fascinating. Watch Todd Blackledge and then the coordinating producer and everybody go through. This is what I want to do. Coming out of this segment, I want to have a tight shot on this guy because Todd's going to talk about that guy. I mean, they're giving everybody their marching orders, exactly how the broadcast is going to come off. And Todd's explaining, okay, this guy, number 2 at safety for Ohio State, I think he's the best defensive player in the country. Keep an eye on him, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was fascinating to see the detail that they go into, 3 hours before the game to prime all these people on what to do. There's no way they have competent enough people to do that, even though the Big Ten Network is focused completely on the Big Ten. There's just no way. They're hiring part-time people to fill out their crews, and they missed the shot. They don't have the shot. The director's sitting there like going through all the replays, like he didn't have the foul. He doesn't know what it was. So
move on.
Show what you don't have.
Yeah,
move on. And that happens on Big Ten Network quite a lot.
Yeah.
It happens they gloss over and just move on from, whatever it might be. And you're like, I need a replay of that, So
Fox also for a while would not show replays so that they could talk and talk and talk and talk.
Oh, God. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah. So
It was interesting. Awful announcing did the announcer ratings, and Sean McDonough, his crew was number 1. And then I think Fowler and Herb Street were number 2, which I like Sean McDonough. I mean, he's been doing this for 30 years at a high level. Joel and Gus were like 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there. They gave them pretty good marks overall. But and Todd Blackledge and Eagle were in the top 4 or 5 as well. So they really like Todd Blackledge. So, there you go.
There are typically a few other teams out there that I think do a really good job that get the lesser games that I actually think are better teams, better analysts, better play-by-play guys than the recognized names myself. Bob Wischusen does a great job.
Oh, yeah.
In particular, and Louis Riddick's good. Greg McElroy's the running mate for Sean McDonough now.
Yes, outstanding.
Yeah.
I think they did not like Gary Danielson, who is retiring, with comments like, thank God he's retiring, and, those type things. Nestler just has that voice that's so distinctive, and you're like, this must be a big game because Brad Nestler's doing it. But unfortunately for him, they had Penn State and Michigan State last week. And some of the dregs, I mean, it'll be interesting when this is all done to go back and list each network's games each week and what the ratings were and what their return on investment was, because they have to be losing their shirt on Big Ten football. There's just no other way around it.
Big Ten has to do better. The Big Ten teams, I'm saying the bad teams have to do better.
Yeah.
They've got all of the advantages you could want. They've got all of the money that you need. You just got to start being competent and stop just hoarding the money like they used to. Like Indiana and Purdue would just, just sit on their money and do whatever and everything but football.
You're 100% right on that. And, it's one thing to lose, but to not even be competitive like UCLA, Purdue, Michigan State. And I want to tell you something. When Minnesota loses a Big Ten game, they lose a Big Ten game. At Ohio State, 42-3. At Iowa, 41-3. At Oregon, 42-13. I mean, not even the remote bit competitive. I mean, to their credit, they did beat Nebraska when Nebraska was ranked that 1 week and beat them 24-6 somehow. That was when the whole Matt Rule to Penn State stuff was percolating and probably put a crimp on the want to by the Nebraska players. But I mean, you put games like this on television, and unless you're a fan of the winning team, you've turned it off at halftime. So, you're right. The bottom half of this league, I mean, Maryland's 1-6, Penn State's 1-6, Wisconsin's 1-6. I mean, this is terrible.
Well, I'll slightly play devil's advocate. Not that these teams don't need to be better. I totally agree with Tony, but somebody's got to lose the game. So the distribution of wins and losses, I don't know how that's going to change. Are you going to have Ohio State and Indiana and Oregon not be 9-0 and 8-1? Are you going to have like a champion that's 7-2 and a cluster of 6-3 teams to bring up the bottom?
I just think you just need better quality games, and all of the wins and losses can stay the same, but you've got teams that provide compelling broadcasts, and right now they don't. Even with like the SEC, we're just talking about Texas A&M at home against South Carolina should be a blowout, and yet it wasn't, and it was a compelling game, and there just aren't enough of those in the Big Ten. And
True.
When you even look at the schedule, you're like, well, I don't like when you have like a bile, and you're like when you're just like, like I don't want to watch that one. But when you're like, you look at the SEC and you're like, that seems interesting. Anything can happen because there's enough talent to make it happen. Like South Carolina is a bad team, but they've got Dylan Stewart and they've got Lenora Sellers. Something can happen for half. And Marcel Reed is crazy enough to allow teams to intercept his passes for a while. He threw, I don't know how many he threw in the first half, but there were also like 3 other drops from South Carolina in that game.
Yeah, I can't in any way argue with any of that, that the bottom of the SEC is so much better than the bottom of the Big Ten. Now, in terms of these network selections, though, there are going to be better games. I haven't even looked at the Big Ten schedule this week, but I got to think that there are going to be better games than Ohio State and Rutgers. But Fox is going to gravitate to Ohio State and Michigan if there's not some really good USC, fill in the blank, Penn State game or somebody else to go to. They're just going to gravitate. So the SEC is not going to feature Alabama and Kentucky for their prime time slot like Fox is going to gravitate toward those games. They did last week with Michigan Northwestern. That could have been a blowout. It would be most years, but it turned out to be a great game. That was a very interesting game.
Yeah. CBS had the first pick this week, and they've got number 15 USC at number 7 Oregon, which is the only matchup of ranked teams in the Big Ten this week. And then I can't make a decision whether NBC or Fox came. I would assume Fox came next to take number 1 Ohio State against Rutgers. And then NBC has this late night doubleheader of Nebraska, Penn State at 7. And to fill out their quota, they're taking Washington, UCLA at 10:30. And nobody east of the Rocky Mountains is going to watch that. And in fact, when people east of the Rocky Mountains tune into NBC at 11:30, and there's not even a Saturday Night Live repeat, they're going to be pissed. So, yeah, it's that's as bad as it gets. So, then the rest of it's all dregs. I mean, Minnesota Northwestern at Wrigley Field's kind of cool. Northwestern's favored by 3.5. That's the closest line of any of the Big Ten games this week is Northwestern 3.5. Everything else is a touchdown favorite or more. Ohio State 31.5. We thought covering 31.5. We debated it last week's show. And then I saw Tony in the press box. I took Ohio State. I went like 42-10 or 45-10 or whatever. And they won 48-10 or whatever. But this week, I don't know what to do. 31.5 Rutgers. I don't know. We'll think about it, but it'll be in that range. I don't have any doubt about that.
Yeah, there's one game in the conference this week, unless somebody surprises somebody. Obviously, if there's an upset, then
the tiebreakers don't favor Ohio State. Obviously, if they lose to Michigan, they're probably, I can't imagine a scenario where they would get to go to Indianapolis even at 8-1. USC plays Oregon this week, and then Oregon has to play Washington next week. And, possibly one of those two teams could make it, or there is a scenario for Michigan to make it if let's see, Oregon beats USC, and then Washington beats Oregon, and Michigan beats Ohio State. I think Michigan goes. So that would be the scenario for Michigan, which is certainly within the realm of possibility. That would be the home team winning those two games, the two Oregon games. So, possible, I suppose, but let's don't get into that just yet.
The committee.
Oh, and
has
Indiana
behind.
is certain to be there. All they have to do is beat Purdue. They're going to be like a 40-point favorite over Purdue. Purdue's so awful. I can't even talk about how bad awful they are.
I like Barry Odom though. I think they'll get better, but
Yeah,
there's not much talent there.
They actually are better. For as awful as they are better than they were last year. Yeah, Indiana's in good shape. And the committee's got Michigan at 8-2 behind Texas at 7-3. Now, an Ohio State win obviously would take care of that, even though Texas would beat Texas A&M. I'm sure the committee would value the Ohio State win much more, even though from a ranking standpoint, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, it could be a chaos scenario where you have a bunch of 10-2 teams sitting there, and it's like, how do you differentiate one from the other? As Sankey would say, we'll just put all the SEC teams in, so there you go. It just means more, as we well know.
I think if USC beats Oregon this weekend, that may lock the SEC into 5 teams and not 6 teams, and maybe knock like a Vanderbilt out or so. Because I think most of the SEC teams that have 1 or 0 or 2 or fewer losses are going to get in, except for Vandy. I don't know. Like that's going to be a tough call, depending on the other 10-2 teams out there, like perhaps a Michigan or a USC that would have wins over Michigan and Oregon and others.
Notre Dame seems like a lock right now with Syracuse and then Stanford, and they're getting a little taste of how the other half lives. That Stanford game was slotted at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time next week on ESPN. And man, they've done Notre Dame Nation wrong with that one for sure. They are crying to anybody that'll listen about that. But yeah, I think locks right now to me, Indiana is a playoff lock. Ohio State with a win over Rutgers is a playoff lock. Texas A&M, they play an FCS team this week, so they beat, is it Samford? They're in, I believe. Ole Miss is a lock to me at 10-1. They play Mississippi State still. Those are the locks to me. I think you've got, and Georgia is probably with one more win a lock. So I think you got 5 teams that are locked in for sure. Texas Tech probably needs to keep winning just to be, win the Big 12 and remove all doubt. But, lose the Big 12 championship game, and now you're sitting there at 11-2.
Bye-bye Bama.
Yeah, they might.
Bye-bye Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, I think Notre Dame's a lock at 10-2. They'll bend over backwards to get them in.
But if Texas Tech if they lose, if they're 11-2 and losing in a championship game, like that's doing more than Notre Dame. They made it to a championship game, which is a thing. But yeah, they're keeping Notre Dame away from Miami because they don't want to bring that head-to-head in. So that tells you they want Notre Dame in, and they're going to do everything they can in their power to keep them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they separated the two, meaning Miami and Notre Dame, by 8 spots to start out. And now here we are 2 weeks later, and it's been narrowed to 4, and Miami has done nothing but beat Syracuse and NC State.
It was a market correction on them. They moved them up a couple spots, and,
But
Alabama's definitely an interesting case.
To be fair, like I know the media has complained about that, but the AP had Miami way below Notre Dame as well. So it's like
all the reporters bitching about it voted for Notre Dame way over Miami.
2 weeks ago, they had Miami at 18, Notre Dame at 10. So it's like, yeah, they're complaining about others doing what they themselves have done. So
They're complicit.
It went from, at one point Miami was 9 and Notre Dame was 12, and then the next week after what Miami loses to, I guess, Louisville, then it's like, well, the media was as done with them as the committee. So now the media is bitching about, what about Miami, Notre Dame? It's like, you were complaining about your partners in crime, the AP voters, when they did the exact same thing.
It's crazy. The committee has Miami 13. The AP poll, the media has Miami 14, and the coaches have them clear down at 15, which means there's a lot of animosity in the coaching community toward whatever it is Miami does, and doesn't want to give them any credit, certainly.
Yeah, and if you're rooting for the Big Ten, you can go one of two routes, basically, and that's either, if you want to ensure that there's a third team, then Oregon just sweeps and they're 11-1, they're the third team, or you get into this chaotic situation. If USC beats Oregon, Michigan beats Ohio State, then you get 3-10-2 teams. USC's get the head-to-head against either one of them, but does USC get in? They block Oregon and Michigan to a certain extent because they won the head-to-head, but USC lost to Notre Dame pretty convincingly, and I don't know that they're going to have an okay resume against an SEC team, but I don't know if they're going to get that nod.
Well, if I think if USC wins this weekend, they're in. They'll beat UCLA, I assume. But I mean, it was a 27-24 fourth quarter lead for Notre Dame in that USC game, and they win 34-24. But it was close to. I mean, USC led 24-21 in the third quarter. It was a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. So I think the committee will remember that and keep that in mind, because their other loss was two points to Illinois on a last-second field goal. Illinois right now is ranked 21st. So if Illinois can keep winning, that'll give USC a ranked win. Still gives Ohio State a ranked win. But I think it would be good to get USC in with that win. Now, if Michigan wins as well, like you said, they're capped by USC, so that would not be good for the Wolverines.
And Oregon as well, who's basically beaten Iowa.
But I also think it's hard to see. Well, would we see Oregon drop down to basically 11 with that loss? I guess it depends on how the loss is. For one, although they don't have far to go. But is there that's another one where nobody wants BYU to beat Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game, because you just don't know what the committee is going to do about Texas Tech. So you want chalk in the Big 12 and in the ACC for sure.
Yes, whatever chalk is in the ACC. I don't know what that is.
It's just dust. You can't actually use it to write with anything. It's just the stuff in the erasers as you're cleaning them. That's the chalk in the ACC.
All right.
It was so much fun.
It is fun. As soon as Virginia started to win a couple games early on, they became my team. So I've been pulling for them all the way. Win that.
What do they have left? They're down to one game. Is it Virginia Tech next week? Is that it?
They got a bye this week. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
What do we think about Franklin to Virginia Tech? I think that's a coach that needed a program and a program that needed a coach. And I think that might be a 10-year happy marriage there. He might, people are down on, couldn't win the big game, whatever. Well, the last 3 years, I think they put up 10, 12, and 13 wins. So poo-poo Franklin at your own peril. Maybe it was 10, 11, and 13. But yeah, three straight years of double-digit wins. Virginia Tech hasn't done that since the glory days of Beamer 20 years ago. So
you got to think Virginia Tech just wants to get back to competing in the ACC. And they've not done it for a while. James Franklin looks a lot around at the ACC and is like, Clemson's down. That makes things a lot easier.
I can fast talk my way through this.
If Pitt can compete, if Virginia can compete, I'm sure I can as well. and he'll bring over a bunch of recruits. You saw all of the decommitments once he left. I think they've had like 17 or 18. And not that they're all going to go to Virginia Tech, because they're not. They're going to land elsewhere. But he is a good recruiter.
He'll get his share of them.
He's a likable dude, and
Yeah,
I think it's still a good recruiting territory in the DMV area there that he'll do well. Virginia Tech, I mean, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, it used to be like a legit thing to worry about them. And for the longest time, it's like, it is what it is. I think, they're like the South Carolina of the ACC, where it's like, whatever. But I don't see why he can't win 10 games there and never have to worry about Ohio State in his life again, except for in the playoffs.
Yeah, I did a recent look during the offseason at the ACC, and Virginia Tech still third in the conference over the last 2 or 3 seasons in attendance. So minus Clemson and Florida State, they still
support it.
Place. Yeah.
Yeah, they do that big entrance and then go out there and lose 31-17 every week.
That's it.
Week. The highlight is the entrance. So, yeah.
That is
it. Enter Sandman, and then the Hokies go to sleep.
All right. We'll remind everyone one more time about our friends at Brass Lantern Inn. That's up in Vermont. You've got the website link both in the chat and in the description section of this video. So check out the enormous array of activities and the fine food. There it was, Tony, the breakfast there at Brass Lantern Inn. All right, guys. Steve, what's going on at Bucknuts this week?
The time keeps slipping into the future. 10 days until the Michigan game, and obviously Thanksgiving next week, and a little bit of basketball stuff here and there. They didn't play particularly well on Sunday, but found a way to get a 1-point win over Notre Dame, which was good. 4-0. They play Western Michigan tomorrow night, 8:00 on Big Ten. So we'll be all over that. Then football, obviously Rutgers, Saturday at noon on Fox. And it'll be Michigan week. And there's no amount of coverage that we can do about the Michigan game that will suffice. Trust us. So everybody will want to know if this one's going to be different than the last 4, or is it going to be more of the same? So I personally don't think Michigan has what it takes to win that game, but certainly didn't think they had it last year either. So I'm sure we'll get into all that next Wednesday here on the show. But just gearing up for holiday time with family and, what could be a really fun next 3 weeks following Ohio State.
Tony.
I'm actually putting together the content calendar for the week for Michigan week. And yeah, I had to create more hours in the day basically to get everything.
That will be a 26-hour day.
Yes.
That will be a 28-hour day.
Correct. Yes. That's about what it looks like, trying to get everything in that we want to do, because there will be plenty to talk about. And, we watch Michigan every week. We talk about Michigan every week, so there's still going to be plenty to talk about. But before that, we get to Rutgers. And as soon as Rutgers game ends, it becomes Michigan week. And so that's what everybody's going to be looking forward to. And that's what we're going to be talking about.
Bryce Underwood looked all of that, aside from about 3 or 4 plays against Northwestern. He started to really show who he could be someday.
And then he turned it over 3 times in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with a true freshman quarterback. And we'll see.
He was sacked 3 times. He had 3 turnovers. And they, as a team, had 5 turnovers and missed 2 field goals, and they found a way to win that game. That's basically the same thing Ohio State basketball did against Notre Dame on Sunday. Didn't play well. The best players didn't play well. But at the end of the game, one guy made 1 play, and they had some good defensive stops as a team and found a way to get out of there with the win. So, Thad Matta, the former basketball coach, said, I would like to learn about how bad we really are in games that we win. So those are the lessons. Those are the times that you can afford to learn your lesson, is when you win a game. You don't want to have it to come after you've lost the game, certainly. So
And just at a time when it appeared as though they had no threats on the outside, Andrew Marsh, the true
Yeah.
freshman from Texas.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Player. Huge
Right now,
game.
in Big Ten play, he has more yards receiving than Elijah Surratt, just to give you an idea.
Wow.
So it could be interesting. All right, folks, we'll be back next Wednesday to talk about the game and enjoy the game against Rutgers on Saturday as well. Check out Tony and Steve's work, of course, every day at their respective locations, and we will see you next Wednesday.
A game